But it failed to do the main thing, and even though Porsche was no longer at the edge of bankruptcy, they still were in a really bad financial situation which had to be changed promptly for Porsche to not go extinct. Last time I covered Porsche models from their first ever model to the last real driver's car, which was the 993 generation of the Porsche 911, after which the most controversial model was made, which got enthusiasts mad, but ironically the next generation was the one that saved the Porsche brand and made it to what it is right now. So after the beautiful 993 came this. The ugliest 911 ever made, except for this one car.
So then the 996, which is by far, for me at least, the ugliest 911 generation that was ever created. This car really didn't look good because of a simple fact that it shared parts with the 986 Boxster of that time, which is a cheaper mid-engine Porsche, which, don't get me wrong, I like the new Boxsters, but the 911 wasn't 911 no more, and it was looking more like a Boxster than the Boxster itself. So why was that? Well, Wendelin Wiedeking, the CEO of the company, thought that the strategy to best save Porsche 911 was to share more components, so it shared directly with the Boxster model, and then use global sourcing, getting cheaper manufacturers instead of boutique manufacturers which Porsche used before. And that's why Porsche 996 interiors look really cheaply made, because they all look really plasticky and basically they look like your washing machine. In terms of drivetrain, Porsche switched from their famous air-cooled engines, and now it used the modern standard, which is water-cooled engines. So you could probably notice that enthusiasts weren't too happy. It changed from a 911, which was the purest car, to 996, which was a cheaper looking Boxster with cheap interior and not boutique interiors, and they switched from air-cooled engine to water-cooled engines, so that wasn't really great. But you know who didn't care about these changes and rather liked them? Those were the rich people. And Porsche really needed to bring new customers in because their last models were underperforming heavily, and so they needed to make money and not just appeal to enthusiasts. Rich people liked the modern look, interior being a bit more modern, and overall the car being easier to drive with more electronic help, air-cooled engines which were easier to keep. So for rich people this was a perfect car. Then Porsche, to make enthusiasts a bit happier again, they released another GT2 car, and for the first time ever Porsche made a GT3 car. Probably now, if you know Porsche, you know the GT3 models, but back then the 996 GT3 was the first GT3 car. While it is a GT3 car, for me the 996 GT3 looks quite ugly, and to be truly honest, it looks like those Eclipses with like a bigger wing and wheels that a bit don't fit the wheel perfectly. I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for this, but sorry, I love JDM by the way. And this Porsche strategy to appeal more to rich buyers rather than just enthusiasts really worked, because from the previous 70,000 993 models that Porsche was available to sell, they sold more than 2 times that for the 996 model year, selling over 170,000 models. So Wendelin Wiedeking, the CEO, did what original Porsche owners was scared to do, anger the enthusiasts, but save the company. And to be truly honest, we all need to be happy that 996 generation happened, because it actually funded cars like the insane Carrera GT. Later the money from the 996 helped create Panamera and Cayenne models, which is the SUV, and Porsche was able to continue with 911, and in the next model year they actually made the enthusiasts happy again.
Even though the 996 was a huge success, Porsche angered the enthusiasts, so now they had to make up for them. Hence the redemption arc.
So now Porsche had their new cash cow, which was the Porsche Cayenne SUV, which fitted more people because it was a 4-door Jeep which everybody could utilize and buy it as a luxury item. that they can daily drive easily and use for utility purposes, like carrying children in the back and carrying actual luggage because you have a regular trunk and not that small trunk. So with that, Porsche can now put their efforts back into 911 to making it both suitable for luxury buyers but also be nice for the enthusiasts and for those people who want to actually use that vehicle for driving pleasure. So the biggest thing that needed to change was the styling, obviously, to not look like a Boxster and look like a real 911 again. For that purpose, Porsche put Grant Larson to design the new Porsche 997, and so you trust the man, he also designed this. So I can say that he was fit for the job. The 997 got a fresh redesign, which was much needed. Gone are those fried egg looking headlights and welcome back the nice round ones. Now Porsche got even more wider with bigger tires and bigger wheels for that extended grip, and overall the car now just looks more like a 911 again rather than a Boxster, which, don't get me wrong, is a nice car, but it is not a 911. Another thing that really needed to change was the interior, because 996's was plasticky and cheap. Now it was again more boutique and more beautiful looking, so enthusiasts were definitely happy and luxury buyers were extremely happy because they got a nicer looking car even though they didn't really ask for it. For the enthusiast, Porsche also released the GT3 and GT3 RS versions, but now, unlike the 996 generation, the 997 generation GT3 and especially the GT3 RS look absolutely beautiful. And for me, comparing it to nowadays GT3s, which look gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but this one just looks the right amount of perfect to be a true Porsche and to look absolutely stunning. And yet again, Porsche succeeded at their strategy because again they improved their sales number, selling now 213,000 units. So Porsche now actually figured out how to be both profitable and to appeal to enthusiasts.
Porsche, for the first time in a long while, were no longer surviving but thriving, so the new 991 no longer needed to prove anything, which was the perfect time to make the 911 even more refined.
Now Porsche was backed by Volkswagen Group because they're now owned by Volkswagen, even if they don't like it. That's a big story of Porsche and Volkswagen, but I'm not gonna get into that right now. But basically, now they had huge R&D budgets, so now they could perfect the newest 911. Talking about the design of this new 991 911, it from the outside got even longer, even more wider, and at the same time somehow lighter. The interior was even more nicer, and this interior is getting close to one of my favorites, which weirdly is the new one. We'll get to that. The powertrain also got big changes because now all the Carrera model engines were turbocharged instead of being naturally aspirated like they used to be, and all the new 911 911 models now got the electronic steering assistance instead of the older hydraulic one, which enthusiasts really loved, and I can say for myself I also really like the hydraulic steering wheel, but it makes sense now to have it electronic since it is easier to steer and overall more simple and more modern technology. But yet again, Porsche angered the enthusiasts again with these changes because enthusiasts like the naturally aspirated engines because they are easier to feel while you're driving, and the hydraulic steering wheel gives you that feeling with the road that electronic might not had at the time. But Porsche yet again had something under their sleeves again, which was the GT3 model of the Porsche, which now not only got a 4-liter naturally aspirated engine, but also now goes up to 9,000 RPM, which is just awesome because the sound that comes out of it is so nice. And GT3 and GT3 RS models were definitely awesome. Still, in the looks, they looked better in some ways, like for example, the back end of the car looks a bit better than the 991 model here, but still the 991 for me just looks better until this.
The Porsche engineers knew exactly what their objective was: to make the new 911 GT2 RS the most powerful Porsche for the road. Objective achieved.
The 991 generation of the GT2 RS, which not only looks awesome, but it is also really aggressive, and it actually was just that. It didn't have the naturally aspirated engines of the GT3, but what it had was the 3.8 liter flat 6, which was a bit smaller, but paired with dual turbochargers, it reached almost 700 horsepower, and having the 7-speed PDK transmission, it was a weapon. Around the track, it beat records, setting the best lap time of production cars at a time around the Nürburgring, which was just insane, and it was awesome. It wasn't only awesome around the track obviously, it was also a weapon of the roads. So what actually ended up happening with the 991 generation of Porsche 911 was they perfected their segmentation. There were the Carreras, which were perfect for people who wanted a fast Grand Tourer. Then there were the Turbo and Turbo S models for those who wanted a really fast yet really comfortable car around the city and on the highway. And then there were the GT3 and GT2 RS, which were insane track weapons. And the strategy yet again was successful because Porsche yet again improved their sales, selling over 230,000 991 generation 911.
The 992 generation of the 911 said to do, well, it's kinda weird, since before that Porsche tried to survive and 996 helped them to do that, 997 helped them to bring back enthusiasts, and 991 had perfected segmentations where they had 911 models for each type of owner except for one, which we will cover in a bit. So you might say the 992 wasn't really needed, except it did.
So to get everything into perspective, the 996 generation was the key to Porsche's survival, the 997 then was to make the enthusiast happy again, and the 991 was to perfect the segmentation. And the new 992 was needed to prepare for digitalization and hybrid era of the cars, unfortunately. Apparently there was a car meet happening at that location where I was at earlier, hence the scenery change. Still a good location. So getting back, the 992 was meant to be the last generation of the 911 before hybrid technology is in every modern car. Porsche for the 992 generation completely overhauled the interior, having more screens everywhere and more digital technology basically, but still I think it is one of the best interiors on the 911 or any modern car because Porsche did it in a really classy way. Instead of making everything screens, they still added buttons for the most necessary controls, like of course the climate controls, which newer cars for some reason like to remove. Porsche also kept their tachometer straight in the middle, being physical rather than digital and being absolutely gorgeous looking. To offset the weight of all that added technology, Porsche had to lighten the chassis using more aluminum parts. Apart from that, Porsche also made their cars a bit wider yet again, but also with that they now had more active aero on their more basic and non-basic models. Apart from that, talking about the models, they had their usual Carrera models, Turbo model, Turbo S, and obviously the GT3 and GT3 RS, which probably you have seen everywhere for the past year on YouTube, on Instagram edits, because it is just an amazing and really good track car that is also really good on canyon roads. And there was one more added model which was new for the 992, which was the 911 Dakar, which was a lifted version of the 911, making it suitable to go off-road, and indirectly it is probably the most practical 911 because it's high off the ground, so you're not gonna scrape anything and it will be really good to drive around the city. But that's not it for the 992 generation, because as with every other older Porsche generation, they also get a facelift version where basically all the models I mentioned previously were the 992.1 versions, and now they have their first 992.2 model, which is unfortunately a hybrid. It is called the Carrera GTS T Hybrid, quite a long name, But even though it is a hybrid, they did it in a very tasteful way, having the hybrid technology not overpowering the car and having a really small battery paired with two electric motors, one of which is inside the turbo to help it spool faster, so no more turbo lag, and one in the gearbox to help with launching the car. While looking at the specs, comparing it to the 992.1 Carrera GTS, which wasn't a hybrid, and this new 992.2 GTS-T hybrid, which is obviously a hybrid, it is actually quite a bit better in performance, even though it has that hybrid technology. So talking about the future of the Porsche 911, the 992.2 generation, Porsche still has to release their GT2 and GT2 RS models. Waiting for the car to pass. We are still waiting for the 992 generation of the GT2 and GT2 RSs, which now will probably have the hybrid technology, and probably every other car coming now from Porsche will have hybrid technology, unfortunately. Or fortunately, because even though it is not a pure car anymore, the performance is insane on them, and the hybrid cars now like the SF90 and the Lamborghini Revuelto are really capable cars while having a hybrid technology, so we'll have to wait and see.
And that's it, that's all 911 generations for now, but I do be interested which is your favorite, and yeah, see you in the next one.
You know I'm not leaving. Promise that I'll